Chapter 13 Actinomycetes brought into limelight in ESTHERK Village's miracle. This is a few days before Falma and Ellen have found the first Black Plague patient in the sea quarantine. Bruno de Medicis is in the San Fluive Empire's pharmacy school. He is writing letters and guidebooks for quarantine inspection and prevention towards the Black Plague overnight, to be sent to the cities of the Empire and the medicinal universities around the world. It is because he is changing the contents according to the situation of the different places while considering the topography, race, living culture, customs, religion, and etc. Using Falma's words as the core. What would they need to do if there was an outbreak of the Black Plague? How to isolate a region, how to treat a patient, how to identify the Black Plague in the case where a microscope is present, how to euthanize a patient, how to take care of the corpses, etc. In addition to these Black Plague prevention recommendations, he had strongly requested that all of the excellent divine art users, regardless of their attributes, to positively participate too. The work of writing guidebooks is something that only Bruno, who had built trust relationships with the influential people, hospitals, research institutions, and knows about the medicinal situations all over the world, could do. Falma said that he does have the medicinal cure, however, the limit that he has was only enough to supply the imperial capital, and he does not have the production ability to spread it all over the world. That is why the countries other than the Empire needs to prevent the outbreak without the medicine. Falma has said it like that, but will the Black Plague that had ended 210 years ago really come? He also has those doubts. However, the sense of crisis that Falma was showing was something extraordinary. Bruno decided to believe in Falma. He knew that Falma, Ellen and also his disciples are continuing the quarantine in the Marseille region, and he wants to help them as much as he wants to. But the original job of a royal court apothecary is to stay in the imperial capital during the times of emergency, and take care of the country's backbone in the case that they would become diseased, to not let the country be in ruins. Bruno cannot move from the imperial capital. President, Professor Casper has come to meet you. Bruno's secretary speaks from outside of the president's office. Umu, enter. Bruno called that eccentric old lady professor into the president's room. It is Professor Casper Louise, who is researching about fungi and spores, and also a wind divine arts user who looks like a witch wearing black from head to toe. People pointed fingers at her, claiming that she was doing useless research and does not have any achievements, and she was only given a few research funds within the university. Without making her research results seeing the light of the sun, she was about to reach retirement age next year. Her research was fieldwork collection and taxonomy, centered in fungi. However, there was a more sophisticated fungal research laboratory in the Norbots University. So her research laboratory only has a few students, and was being treated as a field that does not have any future. Right now, she only has a small 2 students. The one who barely made her research laboratory continue by somehow placing funds for it, even though the other professors and managers wanted to end it, was Bruno. It is a research that is being thought to have no use, but he had believed that it might create an unexpected result. President Sama, am I going to be fired? I would ask for at least a month to take care of my research laboratory starting from now. She was afraid that she would be told to immediately leave her research laboratory, and tears were showing in her eyes. She puts together both of her hands that already had wrinkles, and seemed to shrink while waiting for the judgment. No. It is not something about that. I want you to do a significant task for me, work starting from now. The old lady fixed the position of the reading glasses on her nose. Who in the world would like to leave a significant job to a window-side professor like her? Bruno strongly encourages her. It is an important task to save the world that only you can do in this empire. Oh, that is. The old professor was taken aback to the scale of the word world. Bruno has always worked while being conscious of the world, but when was the last time she researched while being conscious of the world? All of her sights were only concentrated to the fungi within the empire. I want you to search for a certain new type of microorganism. and I would like you to increase them as much as possible, and extract a medicinal component from them. The microorganism that Falma searched for but could not find, the microorganism that would produce antibacterial medicine. Actinomycetes. It grows like a fungus that had extended like rays, a bacteria that was named because of that. Bruno called out to her to bring out her aspiration and intellectual curiosity. A species of that organism will become a medicine that kills incurable diseases. The Black Plague and infectious diseases. Please read this. He showed the sketch of the characteristics of the actinomycetes itself that Falma left behind. There was also a sketch of how it would look under a microscope. The information that Falma left continued to enlighten Bruno. Which great professor did? Something that would be the ingredients to an important medicine like that. Professor Casper read Falma's sketches and notes carefully. She fixed her glasses up and down, and whispered to herself a lot of things many times, as if to compare it to the knowledge that she had accumulated over the years. And finally, she gulped, then answered with a trembling voice. If it is this fungi. It is in my research laboratory for many years. I have kept it in a flask. The unappealing old professor who was about to enter her retirement age has already gained the savior from a long time ago. You did great, Professor Casper. It was decided that the university would use all of what it has to create a new medicine from that microorganism. Professor Casper's research laboratory was immediately given the highest possible research funds that can be given by the university. 3 research laboratories equipped with organic synthesizer facilities were secured for Professor Casper, and a large number of scientists, alchemists, and engineers were mobilized. From this day, test production of the antimicrobial drugs was done, and it was decided that Professor Casper would lead that project. Professor Casper's retirement address might become something grander. Bruno gave her words of encouragement. To make it so, I will do my best. If the overcoming of the Black Plague came into reality, the day that she would be showered with cheers from the academic society that she had seen within her dreams might not be too far away. It was a one-in-a-lifetime chance. Professor Casper decided to bring out all that she had to answer to the expectations of Bruno. Even if she were to start right away, its production might not be possible immediately. However, if she does not start researching right away, the lives that might be saved will be disregarded. It was around that time when Bruno received a messenger pigeon entrusted with news that the Black Plague was found from the Marseille region. Falma placed medical examination tools, medicine, and mask inside a bag, then carried it on his shoulder, and flew at a high altitude to ESTHERK village that is west of the port of Marseille. Creating propulsion through giving divine powers to the medicine god's staff and controlling the buoyancy as he wished while controlling the posture requires considerable concentration. So Falma almost hit high trees and birds many times. The people on the ground were surprised towards the unidentified flying object that flies with high speed and was raising screams. Falma's medicine god's staff is transparent, and is transparent to visible light, so the staff cannot be seen from the ground, and they could only see a person flying. I wonder who was the owner of the medicine god's staff before, Falma doubted. A person flying in the sky might be reported to the temple as a heretic, but he is wearing white protective robes, so as long as he was wearing its hood properly, no one will know who was flying. Minor things like standing out or not should be dealt later. Fishing village of Marseille, high in the air of the ESTHERK village. Falma, who have arrived there, was still floating in the air in a high altitude. Looking towards the sea, there are only yachts and small fishing boats in the pier. The large vessels that have smuggled were not offshore. They are either hiding in a rocky terrain, or returned to Nedale country. It is bad as well if they had returned to the country of Nedale. There is a high possibility that all of their crew would be annihilated and be in a shipwreck. Damn it. Where's the ship? I need to sterilize the whole ship. And save the crew members inside the sanctuary for this. Falma asked head priest Solomon to translate the medicine god's staff's user manual from ancient letters. And although he could not use everything, he had learned divine arts that were easy to use. And one of those is the creation of a sanctuary. He filled the staff with divine powers, held the staff by its end, then swing it several times like hammer throwing. And doing that purification, divine arts have spread from the whole staff, and had radiated concentrically. When Falma had activated the sanctuary, it looked like the blue shockwave had bent the air, and spread out like an explosion. Sanctuaries quite convenient are. What Falma used was the disease destruction sanctuary, that is unique to the medicine god's staff. By the way, within the divine arts, advanced techniques that have names and requires activation spells are called god skill. Falma can use divine arts and divine techniques without distinction because he can omit the incantations. However, normally, it would need very long chance to be activated. Within the disease destruction sanctuary, pathogens would not be able to float in the air, and the spread of pathogens from infected people would become very difficult. Right now, Falma has covered the entire ESTHERK village with the disease destruction sanctuary. On top of that, Falma jumps off the medicine god's staff, and landed on the ESTHERK village while controlling the speed. What? To the white-robed boy that fell from the sky carrying the sunlight, the villagers were robbed of their eyes. In the ESTHERK village, serious patients were gathered at the clinic, and most of the villagers were just about to run away from the village to escape from the disease, leaving most of the patients behind. Please wait. Falma stood in front of the village's entrance and blocked their way. Well then, when he stands his staff on the ground, the divine art was activated, and the ESTHERK village was completely surrounded by a thick wall of ice. A divine art of this scale, there was not many opportunities for rural villages to see. Oh ah. It's a wall of ice. What the heck are you? He was flying in the sky. Are you a monster? We've been trapped inside the ice wall. We can't go out. The villagers who have misinterpreted it as if a monster have come to massacre them fell into a panic. I was seen that I was flying in the sky. But it can't be helped. I should show my face. He wanted to hide his face because he was seen flying in the sky, but under his current condition, it was too suspicious. Falma removed his mask and the protective clothes hood, then called out to them. I am a royal apothecary from the imperial capital. I have come to save you. It wasn't a monster, but a human. Isn't it just a child? Why you, please tell us, what in the wood is this disease? It is the Black Plague. Falma answered immediately. Firstly, he needs to get them have a maximum sense of crisis. It was like that after all. We're gonna die. All of the villages will. When the villagers who knew about the nightmare from 210 years ago was about to fall into panic, Falma encouraged them with a loud voice. If you want to live, please listen to what I am going to say right now. While taking a look through the villagers, Falma continued his words with a clear voice. The Black Plague is a disease caused by small organisms that cannot be seen by the naked eye. If it were let alone, the fatalities would only increase. Even if you run away from here while infected by the Black Plague, you will still die. Even if you leave the village, if you were stung by fleas that carry the Black Plague, it would cause the Black Plague. What should we do? We're still going to die whatever we do. And why the heck are you enclosing us? The male hunter that was in a frenzy shouted at Falma while pointing a knife. That's why I'm telling you. I have come with a strong medicine to fight the Black Plague. Medicine for the Black Plague. Does that exist? Third-class apothecary who was the first to try and run away from the village walked in front with unreliable feet, seemingly to be unbelieving. I cannot promise that everyone will be saved. However, let us fight together to minimize the fatalities. The reason that I enclosed this village with an ice wall is also to save you. Anyone would be afraid of a deadly disease, but please do not run away and receive treatment. Falma asked help to the village official to grasp the number of people within the village. The population of the ESTHERK village is 524 people. There are 93 people who were carried into the village's clinic. 15 people who have died. 8 people who have already left the village. 18 people who are coincidentally not in the village. 390 villagers in this place right now. Falma divided the ice walls that covered the village with 3 areas. He removed a part of the ice wall, and created a small entrance. Divide the infected and non-infected. We will divide them with section with serious conditions, infected, and non-infected. He made a triage. He looked at the 390 villages in that place using diagnosis I, and divided them into their sections. And during that, he handed out masks, and urged them to wash their hands with generated water. The ones who have entered the non-infected sections became happy, and the ones who were placed in the infected section had their shoulders low. The division of the sections is a measure to prevent the spread of infection. I will hand out medicine to everyone. Falma handed out sparfloxacin that he prepared beforehand in parts into the villagers with the help of the village's official and pharmacists according to their sections, and started to instruct how to use the medication according to the manual that Falma handed. Those pregnant, children, and toddlers, please come to me. Falma gathered the villagers who need to be careful about the use of the medication, and personally looked at their conditions to give the appropriate amount of medication. Thus, when the prescription of the medicine began, there was a situation where there was a commotion, and knife was taken out to receive the medication first. You fools, the pharmacist Sama is even giving us medicine, so give him a break. Who wants to die right now? And then the village official, who was irritated, pulled out a sword, so the commotion has ceased. Please calm down, I have prepared enough for everyone. I will also let the people who have yet to be infected take them too. Falma encouraged them, and made them calm down. He finished giving out medicine to everyone who was present, let them take it, and asked to grasp the number of villagers. For a while, it looks like they have felt alive again after receiving the medicine. Falma created generated water using divine arts and stocked water in water jugs, and asked them to wipe their bodies using that water. And then, he incinerated the clothes they wore that was infected with the plague, and asked them to change into old clothes that they have in their closet, the ones that do not have the plague. Next, Falma went towards the clinic where the seriously ill were gathered, and started to treat them. The beds were aligned in a wide space, and the patients are laid down there. Even the floor was filled with patients. Some of the temple's medical priests and priests who was doing charity have stayed. But they were unable to do anything for the patients who were suffering a high fever, and the patients that had started to have bloody spots. They were wearing weird bird-shaped masks in their face, and was wearing thick white protective clothes and gloves. In the beaks of the bird, herbs with strong aroma for chasing away evil spirits were packed, and the eye part is covered with a glass. Holding a staff, they were looking at the patients without directly touching them. It was a strange appearance similar to the plague doctors in Earth during medieval times. These clothes, although they were not completely enough, Falma thought that they were somewhat reasonable costume as a countermeasure against the plague. However, there is no meaning unless it was used once, then thrown away afterward. When Falma entered the clinic, he filled the medicine god's staff with powers, filling that place with sanctuary, and stops further air infection. There were also priests who have reacted to the sudden appearance of a sanctuary. It feels like the air is being purified. Ah! Isn't it the medicine god Sama? One of the inquisitors that have fought in the hill near the imperial capital before was coincidentally in this place. It seems like he was dispatched from the Marseille parish hearing that the disease has appeared. Child, do not come, leave right away. You insolent, this person is not a child. Thanks to him, the situation progressed smoothly. They did what they had to do accordingly to what Falma had instructed, and made all of the patients take medicine. Falma let the patients who would not be saved just as is drink medicine with high effects using the water created using divine arts. Immediately after treating the seriously ill patients. For the septic patients, a number of measures must be taken with antibiotic administration. A large amount of infusion and surgical resection of the necrotic tissue must also be done. Various state conditions must be managed as well. Patients who are deranged, patients who do not have the enough will to struggle, patients who have lost their consciousness. Groaning voices and sobbing voices could be heard from here and there. It was like a picture of hell inside the clinic. Despite having a sanctuary, it was full of signs of death. Looking at them with the diagnosis eyes, they would seem like a blue flashing soul that have covered their whole body. Falma used water creation to make infusions, and started to infuse a large amount in patients with sepsis. The water created is sterile, and the infusions solute is created by material creation. Falma has forbidden himself to inject needles into his patients, but he would do everything he could in this place. Even so, even in the hospitals of modern Japan where equipments were modernized, 30% of the severe sepsis patients would die. No, I cannot save them with my powers. It was not a problem that can be solved by medicine prescription. It was already out of hand for a single pharmacist. Falma knew his own limits as a pharmacist. However, he had forgotten something. That he has the medicine god's staff, and he is an inhuman divine arts user who can use the medicine god's powers. I should do that. He raised the medicine god's staff using both of his hands towards the patients, and casted the secret technique Relief of the Origin that the head priest Solomon had translated for him. It was a cheat god skill that would call out the immune systems of that the patients have originally. Raise the effects of the medicated medicine to its utmost limit and erase the side effects, but he does not know how it would heighten the immune system at all. This god skill, he had heard that it would not activate if a medicine is not given first, and cannot be used without medicine. Falma has thought that its effects were dubious, so he had never tested it, and did not have a situation to use it to. Even so, as a last resort, he would cast the secret technique on everyone using the medicine god's staff. When Falma had released the god skill towards the patients, the insignia of the medicine god appeared in the bodies of the patients, and the patient's whole body started to shine as if it was protected by a white veil. The god skill looks amazing. Does it have effects? The effects could not be seen, so he could not tell with a glance. It might only have the effects of a shoddy magic trick too. I hope that there would be some effects. Even so, Falma was impatient. Even while he is taking care of the seriously ill patients like this, the smugglers and their cargo are heading towards the imperial capital while spreading the plague. He had sent his father a report that the Black Plague was found. Even if it were not able to get through the imperial capital's quarantine, the pathogens would pass through the villages, towns, and mountains that connect to the imperial capital. A lot of people and animals would become infected. The priests did not know how to react to the miracle that was happening in front of them, and was petrified. The priests who have been exposed to the god skill that Falma used, the one that seems to be a technique that is unable to be done by a human, they have completely believed that what the ex-inquisitor have said, that Falma was the medicine god. And for them who have reached the highest limits of their faith and loyalty, medicine god Sama. Is there anything that we can do? Like that, they have called out to Falma. Thank you. I want to ask you. Is there a water and flame divine art user? I am also one. Please tell us what to do. Two priests stepped forward. They were non-infected. Smugglers and their cargo, which has been infected by the disease, are moving towards the imperial capital. If you see an infected, catch them by surrounding them with ice walls, completely incinerate their belongings, and let the infected drink this medicine. I will also follow as soon as the patients in here are treated. They will be exposed to the infected and the source of infection, but they are wearing protective clothes. 4 units to chase after them were created, with the Flame Divine Art user and Water Divine Art user as a center. Half a day have passed then. The boy pharmacist has left the clinic together with the priests, very exhausted after midnight. The villagers have prepared a large number of graves, but the corpses that were carried out from the clinic within the 96 people were only 3. They were patients who had a cardiac arrest, and were not in time to be given medication. There were also patients whose blood spots have disappeared, and begged for food and water. The modern medicine and Falma's god skill had qualitative effects, making the fatalities at the minimum, saving many patients. I will come again. Do not leave the sanctuary within the ice walls for a few days. Even if the ice walls have thawed and you are able to go outside, do not touch rats and small animals as long as possible. to exterminate the vermin that had entered the village, starting from rats and fleas. And after he finished telling them other things to be careful of, he took the medicine god's staff with his hand, and flew away towards the next land that waits for his help. The villagers placed their hands together towards the direction where Falma have left. All of the people who have received Falma's god's skill in the clinic started to show signs of healing. Their blood spots became thinner, and there were no more seriously ill that were fighting for their lives. Even the patients who were about to die had their lives saved. The villagers who have returned from outside the ice walls through the small entrance have returned, so they were given antibiotics. The medicine god Sama in the form of a human have appeared. The tragedy that hit that small fishing village turned into one myth.